Hey everybody, welcome to What Drives Us, episode 446 for Wednesday, March 23rd, 2022. My name is Russell Frost, and I have the good luck, and it really is luck, I did nothing to deserve this, of hosting this show featuring a special guest this week. So let's introduce her first, and then we'll introduce our exciting panel. Tiffany Grant is a certified HR professional. She is what? You know what, Tiffany? I'm gonna reach out right away for help. AFC. I'm gonna guess is that you're a financial wellness counselor?
Yeah, so that's accredited financial counselor.
An accredited. In other words, not like me, just somebody with an opinion on cars. Tiffany's actually studied and worked and tested and been accredited to do this. So she is also host of Money Talk with Tiff, a super popular podcast that's going to that regularly covers what we're just going to touch on briefly tonight. So welcome, Tiffany Grant. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I think this is going to be really fun. I was already jamming to like the intro music. So
Yay! We love that. Well, let's introduce the rest of the panel. Next to Tiffany on my screen is my friend from the Great White North. He is the founder of the Waterloo Regional Electric Vehicle Association and the host of the Tesla Life, Mr. Mark Coughlin.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show, and we look forward to hearing more from Tiffany tonight. So let's get right to it.
Absolutely. And on that line, next up is my friend Georgia McKenzie, who has so many writing, acting, directing, photography credits to her name. I mean, look at she's not messing around. Georgia McKenzie.
I'm not messing around. There's a lot of people who would beg to differ. But thank you guys for joining us here tonight. We are going to have some fun. We're going to make finance accessible and interesting to you, because you know what? Money is an aspect of every part of your life, and you need to be financially literate so you don't lose your entire shirt. Please stop buying DoorDash for every last little freaking thing.
Oh,
thank you.
Don't even get me started. Well, before I get started, let me finally introduce our last panelist for this week. He is Mr. Supercharger, our friend of the Mid-Atlantic region, Mr. Casey Green.
Hey there, everyone. It was a little cool, a little rainy, but so far, a good week.
It's very low-key Casey Green this week. That's interesting, Casey. No, that's fine, man. You be you. I'm just saying, like...
He's thinking about the future. A sleepless future.
He is indeed. Well, may I call you Tiff?
please.
Okay. I generally go for the long form of the name, but since it is Money Talk with Tiff, I figured, okay. So Tiff, is there anything you want to start out with? Is some sort of succinct version of your philosophy or anything?
Well, I mean, I feel like everybody should have financial literacy or some form of financial education. And unfortunately, nobody teaches us this stuff, right? So, you go through elementary, middle, high, undergrad, grad, all these different schooling things, and nobody teaches you personal finance. And I'm like, it's the most important thing you need, because otherwise you're just out here like the rest of us struggling. So that's why I'm here. I'm here to bridge that gap and try to educate people on just some money topics. I believe that the way out of poverty is ideas. And if I can spark an idea in someone's brain, they might take that and create a business or create something that brings them money, and then therefore they can do better.
And it's about raising all the boats.
Yes.
Not just a few boats.
Exactly. And I have this saying, so #rise and lift, right? So as you're on the incline, just reach and grab someone and take them on the incline with you. And so that's why I love being guests on shows, love having guests on my show. And, we just have these money talks, make it less taboo, right?
Well, and spread the knowledge. There's certainly a lot that we've talked about on this show about car buying. I mean, this year especially, and the last year, is the worst time in my life to buy any kind of new or used vehicle.
Yes. I'm actually in the process of trying to sell one myself.
Well, you're in a good spot, right?
Just to take advantage of that. And actually, like the vehicle that I'm selling, so I have a a Sprinter van, right? Because I used to have an expediting business, and the Sprinter van, it has like a bed built out and everything. So I've used it to go like across the country and stuff. But I'm like, I can actually get double what I owe on it right now. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not too attached. I'm like, if I can make a profit off of a vehicle, which typically is impossible. Like usually when you have vehicles, you have a gap that you're in the negative. So that's where they get the negative equity. But now, since there's a shortage of used cars and everything, a lot of people are able to sell for a little more than what their car is worth.
It's always been funny to me that people would refer to their car as an investment. Like, no, it's not an investment. It's a
Well,
cost.
it is. It's an investment. It's just a bad investment.
Right.
I mean, that's a good point too. I mean, anything you put your money into is an investment, right? But to your point, anything with an engine. So we're talking about cars, boats, RVs, all types of stuff. They usually depreciate in value. So they're not appreciating, they're depreciating. So that's why car loans and making sure you shop around and possibly not getting a car loan if possible is like your best option, because as soon as you drive off the lot, whether it's new or used, it's automatically depreciating in value. And so you don't want to owe on something that's going to depreciate. Or if you do, then just make sure it's a good investment.
You may not
Well, it
necessarily
fills a need, because if it fills the need and you're able to get more out of that depreciating assets, then it makes sense. But if you're throwing bad money after good,
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, to your point, right? So we can't all just go out and just pay cash for everything, right? I see, Mark's part of the Tesla life. I am waiting on getting that Tesla because I have wanted one for a long time. But the thing is, when you are, doing car loans, I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is not educating themselves. And so I sold a car back in like 2018. And, of course, I came in knowing what I was talking about, speaking the language, talking to the car dealership salespeople. And he made a confession to me. He said, typically people don't come in, knowing this type of information. And he was like, honestly, we take advantage of them. And he like said this to me to my face. And I'm like, do you know what I do? I'm gonna write an article about this, right? So I went home, wrote an article about how you should educate yourself before you go, because that's what he told me. But it's like, the least you know, the more people can take advantage of you. And so if you don't know everything, at least know a little bit of something, a little bit of what you're talking about. So that way, when you go in and, you're trying to negotiate, whether it's to buy or sell, you can get more fair value than just falling for whatever. So I feel like that's one of the biggest mistakes people make.
Former salesman here. Even if you aren't coming in with a down payment, you're not familiar with the finance side. We would do that many times a day, all day long. I like to think of myself as one of the non-scummy ones. There's a spectrum. And one of the most dangerous things you can do if you're a payment buyer is come in and say, hey, I'm a payment buyer and I want to come in and I want my payment to be this. I mean, eventually you'll need to disclose that, but you don't want to come in saying, I need $500 a month, I need $300 a month, because they can give you $300 a month for some terrible, terrible term with some very bad figures to it. So you could end up shooting yourself in the foot because there's an information gap there, and you want to keep some of that to yourself when you can, because they already have the experience of doing this 8 times a day.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said that, because I literally just wrote an article on negotiation, and one of the tips is to never be the first person to like show your cards. Like that's number one when you go to any negotiation table and see. So for instance, when I went to go sell my car, I already knew what number I really wanted, and then I also knew what number I could possibly settle for. But I wasn't going to tell them any of that information. I'm like, okay, you make your offer. And then if it's nowhere in the ballpark, I'm like, okay, well, I'll just go down the street to the next one. Like, I'm not going to sit there and say, like, I'm not going to, first of all, act desperate, because that's another way people can take advantage of you. You have to have that confidence. You have to have that, and part of that's knowledge. The more knowledge you have, the more confidence you have. And so, because even when I was buying that same car, because I bought it new and then I sold it like 2 years later because I was like, this is stupid. When I was buying the car, I still held my cards close to the chest. And this brings up another point. When you are going for getting a new car or used car, what have you, and you're using a car loan, shop around for your loans. Like, a lot of people go with their first offer and then they're just like, oh, okay, cool. Here's a check, and then they let the dealership know, oh, I have this check written by whatever bank. This is how much I can spend, blah, blah, blah. Well,
what I
exactly right. They're like, ooh, blank check. Let me write my name. So what I did was I had already got pre-approved from my bank. So I did have that check, but I didn't tell them I had that check, right? So I'm like, as far as financing, let me see what you all pull, and lo and behold, the dealership actually had a better deal than my credit union. And so that's why I tell people it's important to shop around, because what you think might be the best deal may not be the best deal. Because I always thought, the credit union, especially the one I bank with, everybody's like, oh my gosh, the interest rates are the cheapest and this, that, and the other. And when I went to the dealership, they were going to give me pretty much zero, almost zero. And so I was like, this is a no-brainer. It's like 2 or 3 percentage points away from what I was quoted at the credit union. But see, I could have easily just went in with my check and said, oh, this is how much I can spend. This is what I'm gonna go. But I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm gonna see what they pull. And then I stayed there for hours. Like, this was an intense negotiation, because another thing that I realized car dealerships do, and Casey, maybe you can, expound upon this, but they have the salespeople, right? And so you're talking to them, blah, 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 blah. And then if you're like, you know what? I don't think this is going to work for me. Let me get my manager. And see, for me, I'm like, yes, please go get your manager, because that's exactly what I want you to do. Because the manager is the one that can kind of make some deals. Now, me and the manager kind of was, in a negotiation standstill. We were standing toe to toe, so to speak. And I was like, I just test drove the road, down the street. I don't know, it's not like I'm too pressed for this vehicle. And so, long story short, I was able to get it for a pretty good deal, something that I was happy with. But that also goes back to the negotiation side. Don't talk yourself out of deals. Like, if it means that you have to either stay there in silence while the other person is while the other person's speaking, because sometimes I will just sit there and stare at you like,
when they start talking.
I mean, I have no problem with the uncomfortable silence. So I will just stare at you until you give me, your offer, what you're looking for. So that way I can start planning, what I want to do with that. So, and also another thing, sleep on it. Sometimes people jump so fast on situations, and not just cars, just with anything. And I have a rule. If it's something that's going to cost me a lot of money, I take 24 hours at the minimum to sleep on it. And then if I'm still interested, if it's still like, yeah, I think I should do that, then I'll go back. And so that was actually my second day at the car dealership. They probably thought I was BSing, but that was my second day at the car dealership when I actually closed the deal. So don't be afraid to sleep on it. I mean, they're not they are in a rush, but it's your money, right? So I don't feel pressured to spend your money. You should feel comfortable with that.
Yeah. The manager thing is real. It's not a game. It's not a ploy. Most dealerships worldwide, nationwide, you are an employee selling somebody else's product, so you only have so much leeway, and then the managers have more. And also, there's that little bit of the salesman. While you're having your conversations, you can then farm out information that can be used against you by the manager to help them in their negotiations with retaining some power in the deal.
Oh, that is so true. I'm so glad you brought that up too, because I remember like the salesperson like intensely listening for me to slip up. Of course, I'm very
But you said,
careful. Right. I'm very careful with my words. So, but I noticed that he went back and, was having these long conversations with the manager. I mean, he went back and forth to the manager at least like 3 or 4 times until the manager finally came
Wow.
over.
Mhm.
Yeah,
They don't want to come. They don't want to come talk to you. Just tell them this. They want to sit in their chair. It takes them so long if they do the numbers by hand, and if they do them on the computer, they got to get them situated just right, because if their numbers are off, then their manager is on their case or the owner is on their case. So they're also running to the manager. They can just do it from one chair.
Right. So it's a lot of moving parts in the background whenever you're, buying a car, selling a car, what have you. But knowledge at the forefront. And definitely. So here's another thing. After you make the deal, right? Because I've had this happen to me. Be sure to check over your paperwork because I had a situation. Same car, actually. That's why I was like, darn, why did I do this? But anyway, I had a situation where I bought the car brand new off the lot, right? And the car that I test drove was different than the car that they actually gave me. And I noticed because the mileage was off. So, I'm looking at all these things while I'm test driving. So the mileage was off. And then they had charged me for like some of these extra things, like there was like a trunk liner and stuff like that. And then I realized I didn't have it in the car that I got. So me looking through all my paperwork. So I tell people, read your paperwork. Like, don't just sign on the dotted line and then call it a day, because people make mistakes and then some people are just shisty. So to hedge against both of those things, just check over your paperwork. So there was a few things that I was missing as part of that deal. And so I don't know if they didn't expect me to find it, but I was up there for like, I want to say like a week afterwards, just going back and forth for different things. Like they had to fill up my tank a couple of times. And I did fight for that too. But just check over your paperwork. And then another thing that was wrong with the paperwork is they had put the wrong mileage. It was different than what I actually got. And so now it was off by a couple thousand miles. So I was like, it wasn't like us. Right.
Low or high?
I want to say they put lower than what was actually
right. If
there.
they come out higher, that's usually good for you for your warranty. But if it comes out lower, that's a really bad thing.
Exactly. And that was my point. So when I called back up there, I was like, this paperwork is wrong. I was like, this is not the mileage that's on the car. And he was like, oh, it's not a big deal. Right. It was
huge.
Red flag. He was like, we'll throw in some service, some maintenance packages, whatever, if you just don't come up here to get it fixed. And I was just like, red flag again. I'm definitely getting it fixed, and I don't really care about your maintenance packages, to be honest. And so I made them sit there and redo all of the paperwork. And when you buy a car, it's like a whole book,
of paperwork.
Right? Which is why
why they should get it right the first time. Don't pull these little tricksies, because that's
one of the things. One of the things on our punch list was always make sure the miles is the same or higher than what's on the car. Make sure that the numbers match the car and your paperwork, because if you're sending somebody home in the wrong car, depending on your customer, they can't stand an encounter with the police if they think it's a stolen car. And also, you don't like the paperwork now. Imagine the paperwork once the DMV gets involved. You got to unwind all of that and then redo it again. And if there's a bank involved, oh my goodness! So it's just make sure. As a person, just make sure your car matches and the miles match. But as a salesperson, as a dealer employee, you should want to get it right the first time as well, because it's a mess. And like I said, if your customer has a run-in because somebody said the car was stolen, that doesn't always end well.
No.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, my question would be, wouldn't that change in the mileage that doesn't match up to the paper? Wouldn't that affect your financing as well? I mean, the bank expects you to buy one thing, and that's what you say you're buying, and then the paper comes in and it's completely different. The bank is going to have a lot of questions. What
Yeah, if
happens
they
there?
if they sold you a car and they said it had 5,000 miles on it and you had 1,000 miles on it, then you got 4,000 free miles unless you crash it that weekend. Then the insurance company's gonna say, oh, "What the hell?"
And see, that's the
And some
thing,
people
right?
crash it that weekend.
Mhm.
Right. And see, that's the thing. Like, nobody probably would have ever known if I didn't say anything, right?
Right.
Because, like, the bank, they're not gonna like get in my car and like check all of that stuff. So I was more concerned of like, okay, well, what about if I get to mile 90,000? I mean, not 90,000, 95,000 or something like that. And now I'm like close to the warranty. And because of
Mhm.
that gap, I'm not covered anymore. Like, that was the
That's
type of stuff that I was thinking about. And I was like,
that's yeah.
I don't think
That's another good one, especially like if let's bring it back to finances alone. Is if you leased that car, you say, "Hey, it's only $300 a month. I've budgeted this out. This is a car I'm using as a commuter, and it's $5,000, 5,000 miles over." That's
Ouch.
another month or 12 months, depending on how you drive, that you lost, that you paid for.
Yeah.
yeah, it's even more important when you're leasing, that's for sure. Because it's based on, like Georgia was saying, it's based on the mileage, the
Hmm.
mileage consumption. And so if you're getting a vehicle and the mileage is wrong, then you're either going to be short or you're going to be winning. But either way, paperwork should just be done right. And you can't depend on other people to make sure that happens for your benefit. You need to make sure that it happens for yourself.
I've always had a rule: you have to be willing to walk away.
Hmm.
There's no people feel, and it's the whole sales process at a car dealership is intentionally crafted to make you feel like you're committed. Hey, do you want to give us $500 down now? No, I don't want to give you any money to hold anything. If the car you're buying is truly a one of a kind, it's a whole different thing. Most of us are buying production vehicles that are made in the thousands. And if you don't buy that one, you can go to another dealer. You can come back to that dealer and buy another one, probably just like it.
Hmm.
Don't let them make you feel like you owe them a sale. And that's, Casey, part of the strategy, right?
I
Tiff?
never did that.
Well, I'm
I
also
seen it
going to point out,
done.
especially, I'm going to talking to Tiffany, especially as women,
Hmm.
we're kind of easily manipulated into you owe us this,
Mhm.
that feelings of owing, or we don't want to seem mean or rude. And so we nice ourselves into getting screwed.
No, that's real. And then also, what I've noticed as well is that males, especially when it comes to like cars and stuff, they just automatically assume you don't know what you're talking about when you're a female. And so it holds true, whether you're buying a car, selling a car, or even just getting maintenance done. Like, I don't know how many times I've gone to get just an oil change, and they're like, "Oh, well, by the way, it looks like this, that, and the other," and I'm like, I don't know about all that. I'm thinking I'm gonna hold off until next time. But a lot of times, that happens because they just assume that we don't know. And that goes back to the whole knowledge thing, right?
Hmm.
So the more you know, now granted, I am not an expert on cars. Matter of fact, I forget my oil change every single time. I'm horrible. But I do know enough to not be taken advantage of. And so that's my point. So you don't have to know everything. You don't have to be an expert with cars. You don't have to know like what this part is and whatever. But as long as you know enough so that people can't say, kind of put you like say you need something that you don't need. And then that goes back also, I want to mention another point about buying cars. Don't do the mistake that I did and bring your family with you.
Oh.
That's 27 opinions from 4 people.
Yes. And, with this car buying purchase, I had bought my grandparents because, they wanted to be part of the action. And I think my mom even came. Like, it was like a whole big thing because this was the first time I bought a car. So the car that I previously had, I had since I was like 15, right? Or 16. And it had got totaled. And so they're like, well, Tiffany, you might as well get what you're going to get. And, this, that, and the other. And so they were like really in my head, which is why I ended up driving off with a brand new car. If I was really thinking like Tiffany, like what would Tiffany do? Like what would I really do? I probably wouldn't have done that. But when you bring influences, they kind of not manipulate the situation, but you know what I mean. It's like
They're factors. They're factors.
yeah.
They affect you, especially grandparents and parents. What are you going to do? Say no to Nana?
Right.
Mhm.
And I call
And
my
they can ruin the deal for the salesperson, for you, for what you actually went in, the mission, what you're actually trying to accomplish. Like, you want
If the
basic transportation, you come out
salesperson
with leather and navigation.
was an 80-year-old Jamaican woman, basically I'm stuck. The DNC, for some strange reason, every time they're fundraising, I get like an old Jamaican woman who sounds like my grandmother. Here's $5, Grandma. They know. They know. I don't know how they know, but they know for years straight. That's all I get. But when I went to buy my first new to me car that was bought through a dealership, my stepfather is actually a mechanic. So when I grew up, he taught me little things like, this is your dipstick and here's the engine. Well, yeah, duh. And warming up the car and basic maintenance things, stuff like that. And then my boss, the first time I worked in TV, he also taught me little things like repairing light bulbs in the car and fixing a flat and stuff like that. I've had the benefit of some really good car mentoring. So when I went in, I knew the type of car I wanted, but they kept trying to show me cute little vehicles. Like, I don't know, don't you want like a nice little Toyota sedan, or something like that? And I was just like, I need to carry things because I do production. So I know what I want is small. And then they wanted me to buy a new, and they kept showing me colors. And it's like, why? So I was
Let me call up the used car factory and ask them for a green one.
Oh, God.
They're showing me like the shiniest and all the newfangledy stuff. And it's like, hey, new to me means there's AC. And that means I am totally now in the 20th century, unlike my old car, which was all roll down windows. So I was very grateful that my stepfather wasn't there, because he would have just been like, no to all the American cars. And he had a ton of opinions once I bought it. But I was very grateful that I carried him mentally with me in what I was looking for. So that resolved a lot of that. But I cannot stress it enough, like what people think a woman walking into the floor wants when they go to buy a car, and all the things they throw at you, which is the undercarriage treatment and stuff like that, is the things you often. Yeah, it's like I'm personally going oftentimes. I know I have that XY chromosome, but you'd be quite surprised how little anything you're talking about has an impact on me, especially with my wallet. And I did walk away from multiple places, not even because I was looking for a deal, but I knew I wanted very specific things. So definitely you have to go in very prepared to just walk out on the deal and just be like, that sounds cool and everything else, but peace, I'm going to go take a look somewhere else.
Yes. And I like that. Oh, go ahead.
One bit of advice: if you're shopping alone or servicing alone as a female, don't feel like, First thing is f their feelings. F their feelings. You don't owe them anything. They're there to do a service. And then second is, don't be afraid to get a second opinion. So take all the information down if you're buying a new car or used car or whatever, and then share it to somebody you trust. And then, just the parts you're concerned about. They don't need to know all of your stuff unless that's your spouse or something, your partner. But the other bit is, like, if they say, oh, you need some blinker fluid or whatever, you've never heard of blinker fluid, say, oh, okay, I'll be back tomorrow. We'll talk about it. You don't have to be even tomorrow. Just like, let me go get a second opinion and I'll be back. They if they were lying to you, they might all of a sudden start backpedal right there before you get your opinion.
And another thing too, because like in the process of selling my vehicle, like I've had potential buyers, right? And this one guy, he was like, he came to look at it, I know it works fine. I just drove it back from California. But he was like, yeah, it looks like it might have an oil leak. And I'm like, I don't think it has an oil leak, but I have a mechanic coming to do my oil change. So I'll have him look at it while he's here. And then all of a sudden he went ghost. So that's another thing to, watch out for too, especially when you're selling a vehicle, is like people will try to find any and everything, real or make believe, to try to get it at a discount. But that's another thing. When you know what value you're trying to leave with, whether it's buying or selling, and then that way you won't shortchange yourself either. Because I know a lot of people do that, not just with car buying, but just with life in general. Just because they don't stand firm, going back to the dead space, the silence, the awkward silence, people will talk themselves out of stuff. And I'm just like, no, what are you doing? If you would have just stayed quiet just a few more seconds, you probably could have got what you want. But now, since the awkward silence, you're like, oh gosh, I got to fill the dead space. I got to fill the air. And then you start decreasing what you're getting out of it. Then the deal, now you've just talked yourself out of the deal. So that's another tip too for people.
We got a question from David in the chat, and he was curious if you had any thoughts on the current supply shortage and how that's affected negotiating strategies. That's a tough one. So, but you're the expert.
So I guess you have to look at it in two different ways, right? So if you are a seller, then it's obviously going to help you. It's going to be awesome for you, because everybody wants what you have. And so whether it's I've gotten same thing. Okay, let's look at the housing market, because everybody knows about that, right? So sellers, like I was going to sell my house I was about to get rid of my whole life this year. I decided not to pull the trigger, but the housing market's outrageous. The car selling market's outrageous because there's a shortage of things. So if you're on the seller end of things, you're going to get a good deal. If you're on the buyer end of things are going to be outrageously overpriced. Now, you don't want to be in a situation where you're paying an outrageous amount for something and you're financing it and it has an engine. So, you kind of want to keep that in mind. So that's kind of how the supply shortage and everything is kind of working. And also having a company that did logistics, like I literally just stopped doing it like in December, but you could kind of see how, like, for instance, we did a lot of expediting, which includes like car parts and stuff like that. We were doing a lot of car part moving around the country, and it slowed down tremendously. So that was kind of like my cue. Like I was trying to tell my ex, I was like, we need to sell these vehicles like now. Like I was trying to pull the trigger back in like August because I saw that it was already starting to go on a decline. And, with the car situation, with the house situation, another like indicator is like how many offers are you getting for your property? So like, for instance, I know people were reaching out trying to buy my vehicle. I had just did like the Kelly Blue Book, just to see, just curious. And I got so many calls from so many dealerships, like to the point where I was like, okay, y'all, I'm not selling this. Like, this is like, just leave me alone. Like it was that bad. And same thing with houses too. Like I was getting so many calls, things in the mail about selling my house, blah, blah, blah. But it's because of the shortage. So that's why I said it's kind of two different sides to that whole thing. So if you're trying to buy, I would say maybe, and I can't even say hold off either, because we're kind of like stuck in between a rock and a hard place, because also the Fed just raised rates, or they made the announcement last week that they were going to raise rates. Let me backtrack a little bit. I'm talking about the Federal Reserve, and they made an announcement last week that they're going to increase the federal funds rate, which affects our interest rates, by 0.25%. Coming up. And then they plan 6 more increases throughout the year. So what does that mean? That means it's going to be more expensive to finance things. And so that's why I'm like, I can't even say wait either. Like it's kind of like you have to kind of evaluate your situation to see and that's another thing. Make sure you get what you can afford, right? So you kind of have to evaluate your situation to see, okay, should I pull the trigger for something that's a little more expensive to take advantage of a lower interest rate, over the course of whatever term you do? Or should I wait and get something for a little cheaper with maybe a slightly higher interest rate? it just depends. And then while we're speaking on interest rates too, I don't know if you all can see my shirt, but it says 700 Club Now, anything's possible. Make sure before you buy anything, you start with a decent credit score, because that affects your interest rates too, right? So you want to make sure you're going in with the best credit score possible for your situation at that moment, because that's how I was able to get, almost 0%, is because my credit score was so good. If I would have went in with, I don't know, I'm gonna just throw a number out there, like a 550 or something, it would have been like, kind of like subprime, if I was even,
If they even give you anything.
yeah, I was gonna say, even if they give me anything. So you kind of want to take that into consideration too. So hopefully that answers your question. It's kind of it depends, I hate to say that, but it kind of does. So.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good, I mean, sometimes there isn't a strategy, and we have a situation here that's kind of unique, which is, both used and new cars are in a shortage, and both of them are going for a premium. How do you deal with that? I mean, I think you've already outlined, go in there with knowledge, be willing to walk away from it, listen, don't talk, and see where that leads you, that's.
And also just sleep on it too. Like, I almost had a moment of weakness when I went to the Tesla dealership, because I got in. I'm so serious, y'all. Like, I was about to sign my whole life away, because I went in, I did the test drive. They let you keep it for like a good hour or so, and I was trying on like the automatic driving and all that stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta have this Tesla, like I need it now. And so when I got back, I was trying to play hardball, but I think I was giving up too much emotions, and yeah, it was very,
It's
it
a
was
really fun car.
You just had little heart eyes,
Yeah.
little heart eyes when you were looking at the dealer, and they're like, yeah, we can get this.
right.
Yeah, the problem
Well,
with the Tesla dealership is that, of course, there's not much play there in those numbers. They're
Right.
published
Yeah.
numbers. Unlike a regular car dealership, it's everyone
That's
gets
what
the
it is.
price. You can see it on the website, and that's all there is to it.
Right. It's
Right.
fair, but if you're a good negotiator, it sucks. So another thing to look at is when they try to put a time on you. There's very few times where that timer is legitimate. There's the end of the month, and if they say a special is ending and it's not the end of the month, ask them to see the documentation for when that thing actually expires. And then, of course, as we talked about, the interest rates, those are set by the bankers. But again, there might be documentation on, hey, this is a special program for the interest rate, and it expires on Friday, or XYZ date of the month. But it's very rare that when somebody's trying to pressure you with time, that it actually is not something where you can sleep on it.
And I was gonna say, and also when people pressure you with pressure.
Yeah, any pressure.
And I say that because, like, when I was at Tesla, right? So I was already drooling at the mouth, and so I was like I was literally about to sit down and like start the paperwork and everything, knowing that I did not have enough money to do it that day. And so I was like, I went outside, I took a deep breath, and I said, Tiffany, snap out of it, like, come back, because this is not going to work. And so I went back in and I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to hold off for now. And she was like, is there anything I can answer? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, I just like to sleep on these types of things. And then she was like, well, is it okay if I reach out to you, and this, that, and the other. And so I kid you not, I think she had called me and texted me for like a whole couple of weeks afterwards, because I told her, I was like, I'm gonna wait until I can pay it, at least mostly in cash, because I really don't want to finance anything. I mean, my car is paid for, like, that I'm driving in now. So I'm like, I don't really want to jump into something like that, even though I'm a tech nerd and this is me. I was like, I gotta wait. And so she just kept reaching out. Now, granted, I can't blame her because that's what they're supposed to do.
Right,
but I tell people, if you made a decision on something, try to stay strong in that. Try to stay confident in that, because the salesperson's point, and their whole purpose is to make you waver. And so you kind of have to, like, you know, like for instance, in this case, I just didn't answer her phone call because I knew. I knew.
Ghosted. Oh my.
Yeah,
Just ghosted her.
I said what I said.
F those
like,
feelings.
I said what I said when we were in person. I said, I'm gonna wait 3 months. Okay. I'm gonna wait 3 months and I'm gonna save up the money. So I didn't really feel bad for not answering because I already told you my intentions. And so, you know, when I'm
They
ready.
should respect that. You gave them a timeline. That's another thing. Somebody doesn't respect your timelines and it's a commodity. Like, hey, I'm going to buy a Honda Fit. Go get it from somebody else.
Question: did they come back to you after 3 months?
No.
No, they don't. They went on to the next thing.
Short memory.
They were on to the next victim by then. No, I'm just kidding. No.
Right. Well, okay. I think at this point, though, guys, we found the person that needs to get the Alibaba cat bus.
Yes.
Less than $12,000, and you too can have an e-vehicle.
The seat's 24.
Looks like a cat. Cartoon
Bus
cat.
that looks like a cat. Yes, we can get her one of those. Totally will fit in the
I
bus.
think, you know, Casey said something, and I know this to be a universal truth. Now, maybe there's a dealership like Tesla's that doesn't apply on. You know what? I honestly don't know. I never work in the sales end of Tesla motor vehicles. But for all other car dealers, the end of the month is a big deal. And if you want to have as much leverage as possible, those last 3 days of the month, they are all trying to get as many cars as they can because they get incentives and rebates and bonuses from the manufacturers. So it's the busiest time. It's the most chaotic time. You're going to spend the most time in the dealership, but you might also be able to get a little bit more out of them.
Tesla is the most flexible the last 3 days of the quarter if they haven't met their number yet.
Of the quarter. Okay, so quarter
Yes.
rather than month.
Yes.
I'm like, so how much time do I have? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, no. It's the 23rd. It's too
It's still
early.
not really negotiating, but they may be willing to throw in some extras that you may have, that you may value that they can do for free. Like, hey, here's a year of free charging, or hey, you want the upgraded wheels? They're just sitting in the back. Wait, here you go. Here's some wheels. You done? Yeah, I'm done. Give me those wheels.
And you know, to kind of like hit on both of you all's point, it goes back to knowing your audience too, right? So before you start negotiating, you got to know who you're talking to and what's important to them. So I usually give the example of like, I've paid like the same for internet for years. You know why? Because every time they tried to go up, I would call.
You cancel.
Yeah. I would call, and you know, the customer service person that you first get, they don't care. You know, you could be like, I'm leaving. And then it's like, okay, bye. Because that's not important to them. That's not something that they're getting judged on or, you know, evaluated on. So where you really want to go is the cancellation department.
Yeah. Customer retention.
Yes. You want to go
If
to
we can keep the price the same, will you stay with us another year?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that'll do the trick.
Yep. And
See, I need you in my negotiations because they do it every year. They increase your rate, even when you have a 3-year contract.
Yeah, and literally every year I call in and I'm like, you know, this is not in my budget. You know, I budget every month and, you know, I'm like, I mean, I'm being real. Like I budget every month. This is how much I budget for this service. It's not in my budget. You know, I can look at other options, see what kind of specials they have going on, blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, typically retention department, they're like, oh, well, let me see what I can do. Put you on hold. And then it's like, well, you know, instead of going up $20, we might can go up $5. And I'm like, okay, well, that's still not the $20. And, you know, I'll take $5, whatever. So it's like, you have to know what value the other party needs to get out of this. And then once you get that, then you know, you kind of know your audience, you know who you're talking to, and you know what pulls at their heartstrings, what's important to them. And then that's how you kind of negotiate around that. I know I just went on a tangent.
No, it was all related. So
it's a good tangent. You know, there's one other aspect of buying cars in a car dealership, and this doesn't apply to Tesla and possibly other new cars that may come out, but there's the the process in the sales, you meet a salesperson, you talk to them. Maybe the sales manager comes in to sledgehammer you at the end. Maybe not, but there's one more hurdle to cross before you're going to escape.
You do it all
with
over
your
again in the
freedom.
finance office.
It's the finance person. Yeah, you're going to talk, and the finance person has
They're
the
skilled.
ability to literally change everything. And it is their job. And they are high pressure people that sell extra services, whether it's the engine shampoo or the trunk liner or the special wheels or the paint protection.
Change your
or
bank.
extra gallons of blinker fluid, whatever it is. So
I'm so, Russell, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that is the gauntlet. Like when you go into there, like I did have my grandpa in that meeting with me, because he's more apt to say no. Like, okay, Tiffany, no, you don't need that. Like, for instance, when it came to the warranty. So, they always try to sell you a warranty. Now, you can make your own assumptions or, your own opinion on these warranties. But when I was in the finance office, right? So of course they're pitching the warranty. He's making it sound really, really good. And I'm like, oh yeah, I need to sign up for this. So my grandpa's back there and he's like, Tiffany, no, you don't need that. He's like in front of the guy. He's like, no, you don't need that. And then his talk game was just so good. Like they put the best people in the finance office. So I ended up getting it, right? So of course my grandpa's like, shaking his head in disappointment. And I'm walking out like, hey, I got a warranty. And so later on, of course I had buyer's remorse, because I'm like, I probably should have just listened to my grandpa and not gotten this warranty, because I'm probably good. It's a brand new car. So I called, I found out from one of the other employees that you can always cancel your warranty and then you can get a refund. Yep. And I'm like, I didn't even know that. Like, I didn't even know that.
Especially if you sell the car.
Yeah. And I'm like, I didn't even know that was a thing. So I hadn't sold it yet, but I was like, I don't really want this warranty anymore. And so she was like, well, all you have to do is send me a handwritten, or not handwritten or typed up or whatever, signed thing saying, I don't want this warranty. And then I can process a refund for you. And I said, what? Get out. So I think that's another thing people don't realize too, is that after you sign, in the finance office, you can still cancel your warranty if you want to. Because that was my first time ever hearing about that. And I was like, what? And I was like, oh, I can get a check. And I was like, ooh, send me that check. So, but anyway, so that's another good tip too when car buying.
So you mentioned that they put their best people in there. That is true. The promotion path is salesperson to like a closer to finance to senior finance, back out to that manager that they get when they do the dance, then to general manager, then to owning one.
Ah, see, that's good stuff. Because that finance manager, I mean, he talked me out of some money. And when I left, how like you feel when you get taken advantage of, right? Like I'm just
what I just do.
Yeah, like what did I
Very
just
politely.
do? Right.
Just make me dirty. I've been sullied.
But it was so smooth. Like I felt like I was winning when I left. But then when reality hit, I was like, oh no, that was
just got taken for a ride.
Right, exactly. So yeah, that's some good stuff. That's good to know, because that guy, he was definitely on point.
So I have a question, and I've never been able to figure this out, because I was an art major. Okay. And the reason I was an art major is because I can argue anything. As an art historian, we can argue about Titian all day long. There are facts, but we can argue about it. Math? No. I have to come up with the exact right answer. That is not something I'm good at. So all that long exposition is about buy or lease. Is there a formula? Is there a strategy? When do you decide? And I know that it's not always just about purchase price too. It's your financial situation, it's your age, it's how long you're going to keep, use scenario.
Personal or business.
Yeah. Any wisdom you want to shine on buy or lease.
Yeah. So there's so many variables that depends on. Like, I feel like, lawyer, it depends. But I mean, it's so true. So here's like some things to think about, right? So when it comes to buy or lease, if you're the type of person that you're going to want a new car like every 2 to 3 years or so, and you're like, I gotta have, the best, the newest, whatever, then don't buy. It's just pointless to buy. You might as well just lease it, because then at that point, you can keep switching cars and not have to take a huge financial hit for it. I realized that when I was working at a firm, a financial firm, and the owner, that's what he did. He just leased these really, really nice vehicles. And he was like, yeah, I'm not going to buy it because I know me, I know myself. I'm going to want something new, in a couple of years, maybe in a year, whatever. And so he was just leasing all the vehicles. And it makes perfect sense if that's the type of person you are.
Another point with that is during the lease period, either the maintenance is included or it's structured so that it's before any of the services are due. So that's another item that you can look at. The oil changes or the tune-ups or whatever are included, or I just won't need them because the car is reliable.
Mm-hmm. And back to your point about business or personal, right? So. Mm-hmm. when I had an expediting business, we bought all of the vehicles. And in my opinion, it was a huge mistake. We should have leased them. And the reason I say that is because we still have those vehicle payments around. So I'm like, with what we did, and even in the transportation industry in general, most people lease their trucks, their vans, their box trucks, what have you. We didn't know that going in. And so we were just like, oh, we got the credit. Let's go ahead and buy, And so we just did that with all of them. Now, like the situation I'm in now, I'm trying to sell one. And now granted, luckily it might work out in my favor this time, but had it not been an environment like we're in now, it could have been really bad. So especially the type of mileage we were putting on. So that's another thing too. We were depreciating these vehicles very, very quickly. I mean, we were doing at minimum 100,000 miles in a year. And so they're depreciating very, very fast. And so if you're buying and you're depreciating a vehicle that fast, if you think about the regular vehicle, just driving, what is the mileage per year? They say people average like 10,000, 12,000. Yeah, like 12,000 or something like that. And there already a big gap in between what you owe and what it's worth. Imagine if you're doing 100,000, so that's another thing to keep in mind too, which, like we said, depends on your situation. I do recommend buying a vehicle if you plan on being in it for a long time, for a while, So like the vehicle that I have now, I bought it used in 2018. I'm like, I am going to drive that vehicle until, knock on wood, the wheels fall off. Now, the last time I said that's when I told the vehicle. So that's why I'm like, let me not. But, I plan on having it forever. Like I want that vehicle to be like my oldest son's first vehicle, that type of thing. And so for me, it made more sense to go ahead and buy it used and then pay it off as quickly as possible. So then that way I don't have to worry about it. I have the title in hand and it's mine. So, it just depends on your situation, but those are just a few things to think about if you're deciding on whether you should buy or lease a vehicle.
And that same calculus goes in on computers and office equipment. So if you're a web designer if you're a graphics or video person, and you always need the newest, greatest stuff to keep up with the footage, maybe do a 2-year lease on your computer so you're not having to buy a new one every 3 years. And if you're going to modify your vehicle, modify the computer, then perhaps you might want to purchase it used. Just get one that's just come off of lease that's been turned in already, and now somebody else is taking that hit.
Who leases computers, Casey Green?
Dell, Apple, Microsoft.
Really?
Yes.
Here I am, an ancient computer buyer, and I've never heard of a leased computer to it. I had no idea.
My favorite category on eBay is off lease - whatever.
Right. Well, there's that.
Well, that's a good tip. But it literally, it's everything, right? So even if you're thinking about renting versus buying a house, right? Mm-hmm. If you plan on being there for a while, maybe you could buy. If you don't plan on being there for a while, go ahead and rent. Like I tell people, there's nothing wrong with renting. Like people are always like, oh, you need to buy, you need to buy, you need to buy. But buying is not for everybody. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense to buy for everybody. So there's nothing wrong with renting or leasing. You just have to make sure you evaluate your particular situation and then figure out what works best for you. And like Casey was saying, it could go for anything. Let's say you're in video production and you need the biggest, newest cameras. Then if you want to, like, that stuff gets very expensive because I was into that stuff too. But there's no point in spending like 15,000-20,000 on a camera setup and stuff when in a couple of years you might want the newest greatest thing that has 20K now. Now you're stuck on like 6K. So it just applies with a lot of different things. So that goes back to doing your research, just making sure that you know what you're trying to get out of the situation and researching everything possible beforehand so that way you can make the most efficient decision.
Always good to do. Well, thank you for that. I think we should wrap this up. Anybody? Mark, you've been so quiet as always.
He said always.
I'm calling you out, my friend.
I'm just taking it in.
I understand.
Taking it in, comparing it to my situation. And it's always been interesting about purchasing vehicles. Everyone buys a few vehicles in their lifetime at least. And I know in my personal case that it's until I got the Tesla, I was buying used vehicles. I just would buy a used one, pay it in as much cash as I can and get it paid off, as Tiffany had said. And then you own the title and that was it. And then you just kept it running as long as you felt the maintenance wasn't killing you.
Yeah.
And then you would look for the next one. But one question, Tiffany, have you looked at the economics of gas cars to electric cars and what the difference is and what you see out there?
I'm so glad you brought that up because I was just about to say, after you finished talking, I was just about to say, electric vehicle owners are winning right now. Like y'all are so winning because gas prices are astronomical. I'm here in North Carolina and we're at $4 and something for regular, about $5 for diesel, which was the California prices I was seeing back in February when I was over there. So I'm like, I can't even imagine what California's looking at right now. So,
we're almost at 6
right?
across the street from me, and I'm in rural California. So if you're in the Bay Area, you're probably looking at 7. So we got the European gas prices.
6 in San Diego.
I'm like, Elizabeth, I'm coming. No, I'm just kidding. but
I drive a Prius. I laugh as I go by.
And see, so that's the thing. So I'm glad you brought that up, Mark, because I'm like, dang, I should have got my Tesla because electric vehicles are winning right now. The cost of power is not going up nearly as much as the cost of oil and gas. Yeah. And so, that's just my point of view on that. Like, I feel like if possible, electric vehicles are where it's at. And also it's good for the environment too. So that's why I was looking at, the whole Tesla thing too. I'm like, I wanted something that was techie, that was good on, mileage and things like that, good for the environment, not have to go to a gas pump and all that stuff. So, it all goes back to what's important to you. And then making your money move around your values, around your goals, around things that are important to you. And I feel like that is the main thing that people need to understand. Like not everybody's goals or not everybody's going to spend their money on the same things is what I'm trying to get at. And so if being kind to the environment, having an electrical vehicle is super important to you, then go ahead and get that Tesla, go ahead and get that Prius or whatever it is, because that's what brings value into your life. So, you just have to make sure that you have the money management skills to make it happen and then just make it happen.
One point that Georgia and I are constantly bringing up is that in most parts of the country, they can't just surprise you with a new electric rate. There's generally a hearing and a notice and a letter, unless it's like a prescribed, hey, this is how much we can come up if the fuel has come up. And very few places are like completely commercial, just hey, whatever the market will bear. We saw that with ERCOT and the others in Texas recently, but that's not the norm.
And that's a good point too. And so I encourage people, like every piece of mail that comes to my house, I open, because there's like, just to catch things like that. Like if there is a price increase on like water or your electrical or gas or what have you, you'll be able to know that that's happening versus just like, junk mail, toss, that type of thing. So highly encourage people to look at those little inserts that usually come in just to keep an eye on that type of stuff too. But that's a really good point. Usually it's like an act of Congress to get, electrical prices and utility prices raised. So.
And as Georgia keeps pointing out, you can actually influence. Like if they're voting to raise it, you can show up and you might be the only person who's voting against raising it, and you might be the tipping one. You like them listening to you says, "Oh no, we're gonna not. No, you don't need it this year. Wait till next year."
And that's okay. One more point, y'all. I know we got to go. But get involved with your community. Like that is super important too. Like, people, and I'm going to get quickly political, but people always look at like the presidential race and things like that, but it's really your local elections that affect your entire life. So like,
Yes.
City council, the county commission, like those are the people, the mayor, like those are the people that matter.
Board.
School board, yes. Like
Yes.
those are the people that really matter. And so, yeah, I mean, it's cool, the president, whatever, but they're not affecting your everyday life. So definitely, and that's the election that people don't participate in. And so that's just my quick spiel. Please get involved on the local level so that way you can kind of affect how you actually live, because it's super important too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Those state legislative, the county supervisors, all this stuff has a huge direct impact on people. And it's the thing that most people don't pay any attention to. Judges, whatever, who cares, right?
Yeah.
But
Trust me,
meanwhile,
I'm always reminding people that the presidential election is you guys doing fantasy football. Your local elections from your mayor all the way up to your state senator, that's where the actual federal policies will be affecting you directly. And the people who interpret the laws and the rules are going to be in control there. And you've got to stay aware of who they are and what they're planning to do. So trust me, everybody's used to it at this point in time.
yes, it's so important. And it's all fun and games until, you get that increase for your water bill in the mail, or, you stand in front of a judge and you're like, dang, I elected this person, or I didn't elect this person. And here I am in front of this person. So, you got to take all of that stuff into consideration. It's so important.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all fun and games until you find yourself in Texas. Oh,
Hey,
there goes all the
Texas
Texas
used to be
viewers.
blue.
I'm sorry.
I'm just going to remind people, Kay Bailey Hutchinson
There you go.
was a great, great representative. So California people always are very smug. And I also want to remind them, hey, you guys elected the Terminator. Chill. California used to be red, Texas used to be blue. Anything can change. So you got to pay attention.
Oh, yeah. Liberal California is the biggest lie. Liberal San Francisco is the biggest lie in politics, okay?
Yes,
you only have
it
to
is.
live in San Francisco for a few years to really let that seep in. Yes, it's hugely liberal in some ways, but it's run by the same wealthy, influential people that most other cities are because they have the power, they have the influence.
NIMBYism is the name of the game over there. Yeah.
We did
Yeah.
get political there really hard, didn't we?
Sorry, I didn't mean
Are we strangers to this? We're not strangers to
No,
this.
we're not. Oh, don't apologize, Tiffany. This is typical for us. I am the worst offender. So yes, this time they have one other Black woman to complain about getting political on the show.
I haven't seen any of these complaints.
Okay, well, let's do some shout outs and go home. I think we've kept Tiffany long enough, and we should have you back on sometime if you want.
Sure,
If you weren't
this was fun. I love this whole
as long as
concept.
you had fun.
Yes.
Yeah, we would definitely have you back on. We can do some follow-up questions and talk, and yeah, that'd be great. Shout outs. I'm going to start with Tiffany. I'm going to end with you, and I'm going to start with Casey.
Hey there. So I run a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Casey Green. On Sundays, we'll speak for an hour to a few hours. You can jump in and out just like the hosts do. And I've got a couple videos coming out. The one I want to work on next is I did a lithium battery swap on my 12-volt system on the Tesla. And then I did a replacement of the HEPA filter, but I did it in a way that's a little more environmentally friendly than the OEM way. And you'll find that at youtube.com/Casey Green, KACEYGREEN. Also, if the thumbs up button is gray, give it a click and make it blue. Same for the subscribe button. If it's red, click on it, make it gray. And if you really like this and you'd like to help out the channel, help us run things, click that join button, and you can give a small little bit each month, as long as you want to.
Join us.
So that he doesn't have to strip.
In fact, if you don't give us money,
he will strip.
Send me the money. Wow,
we may be underestimating the market for Russell stripping.
I don't think we are. In fact, I'm sure there's a market that will pay me not to strip. Okay, I feel certain of this. Mark Coughlin, what's going on with you, my friend?
Well, if you have interest in the subject of Tesla, please feel free to follow us at the Tesla Life. This week, we talked a lot about the opening of Tesla's next factory in Berlin. It has finally opened as of yesterday, and the cars are being given to customers. So congratulations to Tesla on that. If you'd like to see some more information, just follow us there. And we'd be happy to let you see what's going on anytime in the Tesla Life.
You've blown my mind, Mark Coughlin.
Do you remember the past episode we did with Montana Skeptic?
Yes, I do.
I think he had a different opinion on when Tesla Berlin would open, and I believe it was never.
I got nothing. Lawrence,
but China did grow a little more than when we were talking with him, so he wasn't completely off on the China thing.
I'm sorry. The thing that blew my mind was that you talked about the Tesla factory in Berlin and you didn't use the G word for that. You have my eternal gratitude. Thank you. Thank you.
Gigafactory.
I have to kill myself. Thank you. Good night. Okay. Georgia, help me, please, Georgia.
Oh, of course, Russell.
Oh, payback for all those segues.
So we'd like to thank our guest tonight, Tiffany Grant. And while we are here, you've been here for this long. This means obviously we are your cup of tea. Just go ahead, keep on hitting that like button, hit that follow button, subscribe. Why? Because it helps the channel out. Even if you've subscribed to our channel, hitting like on the individual shows helps boost the numbers and tells YouTube that this is content people should take a look at. And while you're here, Mark is over there. He's talking about the gigaflops, gigafactory, whatever, Tesla factory in Berlin. He's got all that key information. He is sitting down, analyzing stuff. You want to follow the Tesla Life, also on YouTube, and you can find him on Twitter. And Casey is over there doing his thing with training his Tesla to follow him like a puppy. One day he's just going to carry beer home over to just using the autopilot feature like any good sheepdog would do. And that's the kind of thing we want from our Teslas. Although, without the world domination aspect that he's also introducing into the AI. But hit like, hit subscribe, because Casey Green over at YouTube and GC Custom on Twitter is ready for you. And Miss Tiffany Grant, she is talking finance. She is teaching you about money. She has stuff about teaching your kids about money. That was her most recent show, one of her most recent shows. So don't forget to follow her on Money Talk with Tiff T on Twitter and Money Talk with Tiff T on YouTube. And bouncing it back to you, Russell.
And I'm going to hand the mic over to Tiffany. Tiffany, where can we find you? What do you want to plug? This time is yours.
I'm like, oh man, Georgia did such a good job. So you can find me at moneytalkwitht.com. That's my hub, that's my home base. So you can find anything you ever wanted to know about me. Also, I'm Money Talk with T on every platform, like literally. I said I was a tech junkie, right? So I'm literally everywhere. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you are, I am. I'm watching it. No, I'm just kidding. And then I also have a YouTube channel, Money Talk with Tiff. So all the podcast episodes for the podcast are all video too now. So you can look at my face if you wanted to. But it's really fun and we have a lot of fun on the podcast and we talk about all things money. So I'm all about financial literacy and education. That's what I'm here for. I'm not like the typical finance person. As you can see, I'm very laid back, very down to earth. And that's exactly how I am all day, every day. So if this was a little too much for you, might not want to come to the channel, but if it was right up your alley, then please join me and make sure you subscribe, like, and share any of my content. That would be awesome.
And it is definitely for you because financial literacy is key for everybody, no matter how much or how little you have. Managing your money properly is going to benefit you in the long run. So yeah, definitely bounce on over to T.
Yes. And then also really quick, that blog post that I just did about negotiation. So a lot of this stuff, I actually only went over a few of my tips, but I wrote about 15 different tips because I just have so much information to share. So definitely check that out. So that way you can just become a better negotiator because that affects your money too. So I just wanted to point that out as well.
Look, if you're wealthy, you've got the slop. You can afford a few mistakes. It's not good, but you can afford it. If you're like me, you can't afford to screw up. And you've got to be on point. You've got to know what you're doing. And thank you, Tiffany, for helping us, steering us in the right direction.
You're welcome. And I just want to, like, now I have another point because you said that.
Okay.
We'll be here all night. No, but you know, how you said, you know, if you have a lot of money. So I've seen, like, I used to work with millionaires and I've seen people like run through money. So it's like it really doesn't matter how much you have. It's more about how you manage it. So I've seen people that made 30,000 but had way more wealth, you know, 30,000 a year, but had way more wealth than people that had a million, you know, or whatever sitting in their investment account. So I just wanted to point that out too. It's not about how much you make, it's about how you manage it. And so just make sure that you're managing your money correctly, and then the world is pretty much yours.
Yep, I've seen some high income individuals with really bad credit. It's like, how how did this happen?
It happens.
It does. It totally
One of the
does.
artists
Oh,
that
yes.
one of the artists that I used to work for and I were talking, and then I went to talk to said artist manager, and I was like, why is so-and-so doing this other stuff for cash? And I'm like, you realize what that person's monthly expenses are? Like, of course, I have no idea. Said that person spends just to get out of bed $190,000 a month to live.
What?
And I'm
No.
like, that's why that person is under some financial pressure and they're doing X and X and X. And I went, okay, well, that makes sense because 190K a month, that's a big nut, even if you've made a lot of money over a long and successful career.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Jesus be offense. All right, let's close up the show
don't
on
let
that one.
that happen to you. You know?
I don't know if y'all see the sweat beads, but I'm like, it's not even my money. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm out here sweating bricks because, I might go out and get some poke once a month and spend $20 on it. It's like, well, no, I could just go home and cook myself a meal.
Yay,
But-
cooking at home.
You know, if it brings you joy, $20, once a month, once a week might not kill you. So, you know, that's
I
another
could do it
thing.
to a camera.
Definitely. I mean, you have to budget that stuff too, but as long as it's budgeted, you know, you're okay. Okay, enough. Tiffany Grant, thank you so much for being on the show. You've been wonderful. We definitely want to have you back. I want to thank Tiffany Grant, Mark Coughlin, Casey Green, and of course, Georgia McKenzie and her cats.
Yes, they're just everywhere today.
I just one of them's been jumping up and down in the window all and I've just been like, yeah, I don't know. I'm bad. I don't know that. Oh, I only know Odo.
Yeah, that's Odo.
Yeah.
Odoroki.
So there
Yeah.
you go. I want to thank all of you. And of course, as always, I want to thank Michael Mannering for his amazing theme music. Visit him at manthing.com and buy a song or two. I want to thank all of you for tuning in and or listening every week. You guys are the reason we do this show. Thanks very much. Tune in next week and find out what drives us. Money, money, money. See you, everybody.